For 17 years, Stewart and Bill were partners, dignified, successful contributors to society in many ways. When Bill died in the first wave of the AIDS epidemic, without warning or fairness, Stewart became overwhelmed and bewildered by the circumstances and challenges ahead. Speaking with great eloquence and detail, Stewart describes how he went from a complete lack of motivation to leaving his grief behind. Here is Stewart's description of Bill the man, what they did together, and the arc of time from devastation to inspiration, including strategies and coping skills that worked.
I met Bill in 1980 when I was 28 and he was 32, and we decided to, after a period of dating on and off and establishing a really warm friendship, we sort of fell back into a romantic relationship in 1982. And once that happened, we were pretty much together for the rest of his life. He was a former actor who worked at the New York State Council of the Arts. He was a program counselor in what's called the Special Arts Division that worked with developing arts groups. He was, as the photographs show, extremely handsome and very kind and intelligent and had a great sense of humor. Very responsible, very serious, but there wasn't anything emphatic or attention-grabbing about it. When he was in a room, he was very quiet and modest and had a humility to him, but he was, I think, pretty much always the smartest person in the room and the person of fewest words. But when he spoke, everyone really listened and paid attention. We lived our lives together, everything, from we would go to a lot of theater. We both were former actors and had a love of acting and theater, and we lived very close to Lincoln Center, so we did a lot of cultural things together. And well, I hadn't even thought about me. It really had not thought about, I was vaguely aware that I needed to take better care of myself because I wasn't getting much sleep. And when we got approval for the round-the-clock home health care, and then his mother came up, and suddenly I had been solely responsible for him and surviving on 2 hours sleep a night and just struggling to remain awake and to just take care of the basic chores of keeping clean and feeding us both. Suddenly I had nothing to do other than sit with him, and I promptly became sick. I got shingles. And my doctor said, well, it's interesting that shingles is a disease that classically occurs under two circumstances. Somebody has a weakened immune system and they're just open to any invasion by all kinds of infections. Or if you've had chickenpox, which I had, and you have the incipient virus, it's very common for people who have been through a lot of stress, get through a crisis, having survived it just on adrenaline and willpower, and then suddenly this crisis is over and they get shingles. And then suddenly there I was on my own again. And the first thing I did was decide, well, I'm going to reclaim our room. And I went in there and changed things around and moved back in. So I had a lot of time in my hands for the first time in years. And I had friends who checked in and people who were there for me if I needed them, but I didn't know how to ask for that. I had no idea. And then I saw a notice in my mailroom about 3 or 4 weeks after he died that there was a retreat at a Zen monastery in upstate New York in Livingston Manor that was a retreat specifically for people who were living with serious illness or who had been caretakers for someone who had a serious illness. And the whole environment of this retreat was exactly what I needed. It was very gentle and supportive, but everyone gave you space and privacy when you wanted it, and seemed to know when you didn't want it, and so I felt very much at ease. And the guy I was sharing my room with was telling me about an organization that he went to called Friends Indeed, which was an organization that provided ongoing support both in group group sessions and availability for workshops and individual and group counseling for people who are living with serious illness or who had lost somebody to serious illness. And when I got back and they had an open walk-in group session every Tuesday night. And the week after I got back to the city, I went to that Tuesday night session. And I found it to be a very helpful and supportive place. I looked forward to going every Tuesday night after I'd been there for a while. I volunteered to work the telephones. And eventually I was even in a group session, a group therapy session with a therapist for I met her through, she was on the board there, and I met her and about 6 months into my going to the program, and individually, because I really needed to speak to somebody about what I didn't have a name for, but I think I felt a strong sense of survivor's guilt, a sense that I hadn't done enough for him, that I had failed him in some way, and I couldn't get past these feelings that they were unresolved, that I should have apologized, and I don't even know for what. I just couldn't get out of my mind that I hadn't been big enough to deal with the crisis. And I needed someone to talk through that with. It wasn't even on the radar screen that there was something that I could have done for myself during those years. It never occurred to me. I was a middle-aged man dealing with being single and not having a clue, you know. So, and that's, I don't know if I still have a clue. But I think I was a little worried at first that I'm not going to be able to do this. You know, I'm not going to be able to maintain a career and a home. I can't even be responsible for taking care of the cats. You know, I can't do this on my own. I'm not going to make it. And one thing that I learned about myself, at least, and was that life is full of surprises, and there's no point in predicting what you can or can't do. In my own case, I just found that the more that was required of me, and I started to feel that I couldn't do this, I'm not up to this, when it became clear that he was not going to get better and that I was going to have to care for him, and the choice that we made to keep him at home, you know, I just didn't think I could do it. And I had a couple of meltdowns, once in my doctor's office and once when I was with some friends. And but what became obvious to me as the weeks and months went on was that I struggled against the reality of what was going to be necessary, but I ended up doing it. At least in my case, and I think, you know, I've certainly spoken to other people who've been through similar things, your heart doesn't really break. It's wounded, but it gets bigger. You know, it's like the pain doesn't push the joy out. Your heart gets bigger to make room for the pain. And the sadness is always a part of my life, but so is the joy and the pleasure in being alive. And I think even shortly after he died, when I woke up in the morning, I wasn't sorry to be alive and waking up. I think there was a numbness that gradually gave way, but there was never a regret or a feeling that I didn't want to be alive or that I wasn't going to have a life. I think every day when I woke up, I felt a sense of hope that I didn't know how it would happen, and I still don't know. I couldn't predict to you where I'll be and how I'll be feeling a year from now, but I'm hopeful that I'll be somewhere feeling something, and that I'll be glad to be alive next year. I'm not going to give anyone any advice because I think everyone's their own universe.
Stewart is the first openly gay widower to offer his advice, suggestions for best coping skills strategies. Although Stewart makes it very clear that he has no intention of telling anyone what to do, his words resonate with information, inspiration, and the hope of service to others in the gay community who have lost a loved one.